Great. So, welcome to our very first book club, our In Her Own Words author chat series of 2023. And I am super excited that we have Liz Childs Kelly with us. We are talking about her beautiful book, Home to Her. It is beautiful in its words and it is beautiful in its cover. I mean, it is one of the most stunning covers. I know you were thrilled with that, Liz. Because
Oh,
covers
yeah.
don't always come out as beautiful.
Oh, yeah. And there's a whole story to that cover,
Oh, I can't
which
wait.
we can talk about or not, but yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So, this book fits so very well with what we do at WomanSpirit Reclamation. We are all about reclaiming our self-sovereignty, especially in a spiritual sense. And this is Liz's personal journey, but also a universal journey and a lot of research and a lot of thoughtful processing how we connect with her, the her that had been denied, stolen. It's just such a beautiful book. So we're going to honor the sacred feminine. We're actually going to start and end today with a meditation because we cannot come home to her through thinking about her. We have to feel her and we have to settle into her. So I'm going to start us with our connecting meditation that we often start with. And then Dominique has a special meditation that Liz is going to read part of the book at the end. So I invite you to settle into the space. Find a comfortable seat. You can let your eyes close. And as you do that, you go inside. You go into yourself. Feel yourself getting heavier and rooted and grounded. And nothing else going on outside of you right now can take away that rootedness. Coming home to yourself is coming home to her. Feel your breath. It's a constant tether. It's a constant way back home. Follow it in and out. Get lost in its weaving. And bring your hands to your own heart, palm over palm, feeling your chest rise and fall, feeling your heart beating, becoming attuned to your rhythm, your breath, your heartbeat. And as we are connecting with ourselves, we also want to connect with each other so that this circle is a sacred space today. So I invite you to reach your hands out, maybe blink your eyes open and see who's on either side of you and connect with them energetically. Picture your palm touching the women's palms on either side of you. And when you do that, become aware of the energy in your fingertips, perhaps tingling as our shared energy begins to circle from fingertip to fingertip, transforming this grid into a circle of women connected across the miles. And trusting in the space of the circle, we can now bring our hands back into our own hearts, bringing in all of the group's energy, sealing it in. Take another deep breath. And when you're ready, you can join the circle again. Oh, so I thought we would start today with a little connection to each other and honoring the her that we're discovering, the sacred her, the sacred she. I just want you to speak your name and speak a name that you relate to the sacred feminine. It can be anything, it can be meaningful to you. We don't have to understand it. So I'll start and then I'll call on someone, and you do the same. So I'm Monette, and I'd like to invoke the name Mama Moon. And I will call on Dominique.
I'm Dominique, and I would like to invoke two names because it calls to me. I would like to invoke Sophia, and I would like to invoke Maman Brigitte. And I'm going to call on Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura, and I'd like to invoke Lilith. And I'm going to call on Wendy.
I'm Wendy, and I would like to invoke Eve, and I'll call on Letitia.
Hi, I'm Letitia, and I would like to invoke and invite Dalek Mata. Sorry, and I'm calling on Liz.
I'm Liz, and I would like to invoke and invite two people to Inanna and also Guadalupe. And I am going to call on Tracy.
I am Tracy. I'd like to call to Mother Nature and Persephone. Adriana.
Hi, I'm Adriana, and I would like to invoke Kali and Mother Mary.
And I think, Mom, you're the last one.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Sissy.
I'm Sissy, Monette's mom, and I would like to invoke Mother Earth.
Oh, that.
And Wendy, has Wendy gone?
Yes, Wendy's gone.
Okay, yes, okay.
We got everybody. Yep.
All right.
So now our circle is full. We're here. We've invoked many names of the goddess, and let's start our conversation with Liz. I'd like to just read her official bio so you'll know who we're talking to today and some of her experiences. Liz Childs Kelly is a writer, award-winning researcher, educator, community builder, and host of the popular Home to Her podcast, which is dedicated to amplifying the voices of the sacred feminine. Her writing has been featured in a variety of online publications, including Forbes, Mashable, Rebel Society, Human Parts, and Braided Way, as well as the Girl God Books anthology, Just As I Am, Hymns Affirming the Divine Female. An initiated priestess in the 13 Moons lineage, she also holds certifications in Reiki as well as Vinyasa and Yin Yoga. Liz lives in rural Virginia with her family and can often be found exploring the nearby Blue Ridge Mountains or wandering in the woods behind her home. Same, Liz. Same. I'm a woods wanderer. If you want to follow Liz, she's hometoher.com and her Instagram is home to her. So welcome, Liz.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be with you all.
Oh, there's so many places we could start. One thing I marked in my notes that I thought was really interesting and compelling at the very beginning, before I even read the first word, was the land acknowledgement that you did. A lot of times that feels really like someone's checking a box, and yours felt really true. And the way you worded it felt really connected. It opened something for me. How the sacred feminine as a land that has been stolen from us. And I felt that in the land acknowledgement. Do you mind if I read the land acknowledgement? Because I
No.
think if there's an example for how this is done, this is it. So it says, this book was written on land taken from the Saklan tribe, often referenced as part of the larger, I should have had you read this, Liz, because I'm not going to pronounce it right.
Do you want me to read it?
I would love for you to read it, because
Yeah.
it's going to be truer if you read it.
I'm happy to read it. Hold on, let me get to that page. This book was written on land taken from the Saklan tribe, often referenced as part of the larger Miwok tribe located in the East Bay of California, as well as on land taken from the Monacan Nation of Central Virginia. Both the Miwok tribe and Monacan Nation are federally recognized tribes with documented histories of continued ancestral presence on the land prior to the arrival of European colonizers, including my people.
Love that. It felt like such a not just an acknowledgement, but like accountability for our part in that. I don't know, something about that I was like, oh wow. Yeah.
Well, I think the land, I knew it when I started writing the book, which I lived in California at the time when I started it. And I knew it when I lived there that the land was a really important part of being able to write the book, like in ways that I cannot, unpack or define, but I knew it. Like, I don't know that the book would have started, that all of this would have started for me had I not been in that particular place. And so, and it really, for me, the sacred feminine and the awakening to that has gone not as neatly as hand in hand, but has gone hand in hand with understanding what my ancestral people, and I wrestle with that and write about that in the book, how my ancestral people have been complicit in the taking of that land without acknowledgement. So it felt like a small thing to do, but something really important to do, because the land has been giving to me. And if the land has been giving to me and helping me do this, then that means the ancestors of the land have been doing that as well. And so at a bare minimum, they deserve my acknowledgement and my respect.
Yes. Yes. And that was just the beginning of what I found was a really intersectional look at this topic, because it is impossible to talk about reclaiming the sacred feminine without trying to dismantle the patriarchy that is why she disappeared in the first place, the capitalism, which is another reason she disappeared, the white dominance. All of those things are layers. Can you talk about the intersection, the layering of all those systems in your quest to uncover the sacred feminine?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I started this work, it was so refreshing to have something besides this male monotheistic God that I had been given in the the Christian church, and specifically in the Baptist church, which may or may not mean anything to people on this call, but you know, there's different flavors of Christianity, and Baptist is one of them. And so embracing the sacred feminine felt so incredibly liberating. And then you could find all of this really old evidence of the goddess in older traditions. And so it was a really easy step to patriarchy destroyed the goddess, and all of us women are suffering because of that. And I think that in some ways there is truth to that. And if I look back from where I am now, a lot of what I was reading and absorbing was written by women of European descent who had a particular view at a particular time. And if we aren't talking about the fact that, yes, so for my people, I think there's a very clear documented evidence of the patriarchy doing everything it could to destroy the goddess. But that patriarchy was carried forward by my ancestors, knowingly or unknowingly, to people who did not, who still had a sense of the sacred feminine until colonizers arrived on their land. And so it is just factually inaccurate to say that the goddess disappeared 10,000 years ago or whatever. Maybe true for some people, not true for all. And I think when we skip over that reality, we're denying other people's reality and whether or not we are complicit in patriarchy and in white supremacy and in a colonial narrative. And I think that patriarchy is so slippery. Like, oh my gosh, like we can't, like it is literally, you know, like toxic. I almost said vines. I don't think vines are toxic, but you know, like it gets wrapped in our system or something. And so I think that we have to really look for ways in which it's embedded. And I think I hold myself to an even higher standard of that as a white woman of European descent living on land that was taken by colonizers. You know, I need to be doing that unpacking. So, and this didn't arrive until I was a couple years into writing the book. In fact, I had a whole book done. I had the whole thing done. And my publisher beautifully rejected it. It's like the best rejection letter I've ever gotten in my life. It was like, oh, this is a lovely book, but now's not the time. I don't know. Like, I don't. And so I set it aside for a couple of years. And then when I came back to it and, you know, felt the call to start working on it again, I saw right away that I had brought this lens that was limited, and I really needed to address that. And so that started a whole second phase of writing it. And was so frustrated by the process. It took 6 years start to finish. And I'm so grateful for the process now, because I think a book is, it becomes static, right? We are not static, but the book is static. It's done. It's on paper. I can't go back and change it. And so I want to say that I approached this with as much integrity as I could at that moment in my life, knowing and praying that I'd get to continue evolving and learning, and I might write something totally different in 5 years. But I can say in all honesty that this book, when I wrote it, it was in integrity, and I did the absolute best I could. And so I'm really grateful that the process played out that way.
Yeah, I do think that is, I don't know, just for my own experience, that's maybe a more common process than we realize, because mine almost identical when I wrote my book. I also grew up Southern Baptist, and I also thought I had it, thought I nailed it, was ready to go, and took probably almost identical, about 2 years off, and then came back to it, and then I saw what needed to go in. So I love, and that's the sacred feminine, right? It's not linear, like I'm going to do the outline, then I'm going to write it, then I'm going to publish. No, it's like you have to go with the flow wherever she takes you.
Oh yeah, she doesn't care about your timeline and your linearity. She's could care less.
Yeah, beautiful. So related to that, I was thinking about I think this is a hard thing to nail down, the idea of appropriation, because when you talk about like some of the non-colonizing cultures who managed to hang on to the the she, the wisdom, the divine feminine in different forms. I always like to ask people, how do you honor that wisdom and learn from that wisdom without appropriating that wisdom? Because we don't want it to get lost. We want to take it in, but we don't want to take it like, you know, the proprietary thing. So I would just love any thoughts on that, because I think that is an ongoing conversation that I find myself in at different points.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's it. And I wrestled with that in writing the book. Like, for example, if I was talking about any tradition that wasn't my own, it felt really important that I find and reference and learn from indigenous practitioners or people who are representative of that culture, or people, if I didn't feel like I found that right source, at least people who are holding that lens. And I know they are, and I can see that they are through their work. And even that was really tricky, because I'm finding my research in the internet age, and I have no proof of this because I'm talking, like, I'll say algorithms. I barely know what that means, but I do know that when I have looked, for example, for works about the goddesses of Hinduism, I am repeatedly served up white women who are writing about this, white Western women who are writing about this. This is what Amazon gives me. This is what Google gives me. And so that was, you know, kind of tricky in and of itself, is to acknowledge, like, okay, it's not that those people aren't telling stories, perhaps, it's that they're not getting to me. So I think trying to prioritize those voices felt important. And I guess the second piece of that is, I think it's okay to learn from any tradition, right? If it's out there and it's available and there's an indigenous teacher that's sharing it, like, then it's available for me to learn. I think it's not okay for me to try and take it and then sell it, like make it my own. That doesn't seem okay. And I even wrestled with that with the book a little bit. I'm like, am I doing that? And I don't have a good answer for that. I felt like I was hopeful that in referencing back and telling these are who my sources are, go learn from them, read their books, that my intent is to amplify. Same as with the podcast. My intent is to amplify those voices. But it is tricky. We also have to acknowledge that I mean, I don't have the stats, but I'd be pretty sure that probably most of the book contracts and what all of that is still prioritizing white voices. And so to me, that's the part is, am I trying to profit off of this, or am I taking this goddess out of context and trying to make her mean something in my view, and then just letting go of everything else because it makes me uncomfortable, like the rest of it doesn't make sense to me, or it makes me uncomfortable.
Okay.
And so understanding her in the context of her tradition and grappling with the complexity of that, you know? I mean, if you think about Kali, for example, she's a great one. That's a very complex goddess. And people like to take her and just talk about her rage, and I'm channeling Kali. And she's far more complicated than that. And can we hold, I mean, she represents time, you know, she represents all these different things. Can we hold that complexity and not try to oversimplify her into something that's like, I'm going to use her to, I mean, the worst case scenario is I'm going to try and channel this goddess to get something that I want that's going to benefit me as an individual. Like, that feels yucky to me.
I love everything you just said, because it gave me kind of a feeling of, to not appropriate, you basically just do the opposite of what we've been taught in this patriarchal capitalistic culture, right? You don't go for the first hit on Google. You're like, nope, there is an indigenous woman out there who has talked about this, and you dig and you dig. And that's, I mean, I call myself an excavator of our sacred feminine lineage, because you have to dig. If you just take the first story, you don't get the truth. And that, the other thing you said is the complexity, and don't just take the, like, you know, avatar of Kali, take the real, read all the stories. So I like that. And I think that's something that we can do. I think next time I Google something, related to something from a different tradition, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about, one of the first tasks that you undertook in connecting to her is, what am I going to call her? This whole naming conundrum. And, I've gone through that before, and we have to remove the linear, like, this is the name, it is forever the name, it is always the name, because it's flowing, right? We don't get to control, like, it's not going to be static. It's not going to be, I pick it today, it will be forever. But I would love to hear about your process of arriving, the things you discarded and the things you tried on that didn't quite fit, and how you landed on the sacred feminine.
And I still struggle with the language around the sacred feminine. And I think there's many reasons for that. And I start with, in the book, I talk about the fact that feminine, I mean, when I was growing up, there's a whole rich conversation that's happening around masculinity and femininity in our culture right now. But when I was younger, the first thing that popped in my head is like feminine hygiene products in the drugstore, and I'm like, ew. And then I have to challenge the ew. Well, why is anything about the female body gross or disgusting? So I found myself wanting to reject the term feminine because it felt like icky, girly. And then I really had to look at that head on and be like, but why? And what's wrong with that? And isn't that the whole point, that we have made the feminine lesser and we have treated the feminine as lesser? So, if you feel around for words, you start to realize that, at least in the English language, I can only speak to the English language, but the English language gives us lots and lots of words that are related to women that convey inferiority. So it's not like I'm going to turn to a patriarchal language and that's going to somehow magically give me a word that's empowering for a woman, like when the whole thing has, just been designed to not do that. So we either have to come up with our own word, which I tried for a little while. I did. I had a blog that I wrote under called Divinishi for a while, like divinity, but Divinishi, which, was kind of cute, but it cute does not, that doesn't do her justice. It's not nearly, and then I tried on like some Latin, because I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of an ancestral language that my people would have spoken, but the Romans were colonizers, like we got the same problem here. So I finally just ultimately had to stick with the feminine. And then as far as the divine or the sacred, divine, maybe because of my own church upbringing, it feels untouchable. It feels like something that I cannot access, or it's something outside of me that needs my worship, that needs to, there's a hierarchy involved. It's up here in the sky. And I think the sacred feminine is everything, is all the things. So she's that, but that separation between me and divinity, that it didn't feel right. And so sacred for me encapsulates so much more. It is, I can look at everything around me and recognize the sacredness of it. It's far easier for me to feel into the sacredness of human beings that I don't particularly like than find their divine nature. And it's easier for me to think of myself as sacred than to think of myself as divine. And so, and then putting those words together just felt like a tonic to the ew that I would have to the feminine hygiene products in the grocery store. It's like it's a remedy of sorts, of saying, well, okay, this is the language that we've got. We have an option to reclaim our words and to make them mean what we want them to mean. And so putting those together and speaking them regularly is my small contribution to the flow, of trying to reimagine how we think about the feminine.
Yeah. So it was a reclamation for you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Very much. And I think we do that with our language. And we have to recognize, like you said, that sometimes an aversion is not our inner knowing being repelled, it's our indoctrination showing up. So you have to sit with it and feel, is this an inner prompting, or is this my patriarchal training? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have
Yeah.
a couple of directions I was thinking about going next. I think I'm going to do one and then circle around back around to the other, because when we were just talking about that idea of the feminine, you can't really separate what we think about the feminine in this sacred realm from how we are also grappling with the feminine, being a woman, defining all of that in a secular, like in the world we live in. And I am just seeing so many interesting conversations now. And I really loved how you worded this. I think I marked it. It was on page 19 when you were talking about the very basic definition of woman and feminine, and how people have such entrenched stances sometimes about this now. And you have a beautiful way of including all the perspectives. I'm just going to read this paragraph. I've seen these questions rip through female-centered spiritual communities, and in some cases tear them apart. I've seen trans women repeatedly derided as men in dresses, and women, mostly elders, accused of being TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists, just for expressing affinity with such goddess-centric concepts as the maiden, mother, and crone archetypes. I know trans women who have attempted suicide, mothers who are grappling every day how to best support their non-binary children, and women carrying the deep trauma of sexual violence who are terrified of having to share private spaces with anyone born with a penis. I absolutely categorically refuse to label any of them as less sacred than any other living being on this planet. So I love that. And that should not be radical. That is like just common sense, but it is radical, I think, to have someone who stands and tries to hold all of that.
Well, I have a Facebook group, and these issues would flare up from time to time in that group. And the summer that I was rewriting the book. I went to a cabin for a few days and was trying hard not to be on social media so I could focus on writing and just really jump starting this project. And then, something blew up in the Facebook group and I found myself having to tend to it. And it was a wonderful time to have to tend to it because I was alone in this cabin, very much immersed in this work and thinking about what the sacred feminine meant to me. And what I kept going back to was in my own priestess training. First of all, my priestess training was not all women. There was a man who identified as a man who was part of my circle, a very deep, we were extremely close in that circle, all of us, and reckonings about the masculine and the feminine came up in that space. And I will be forever grateful that he was in that space. So, but I was thinking about that training and that experience. And what I felt in my heart is that if I, through that deep process of discovery, had come to my circle members and said, I have realized this about myself. I have not been able to claim it, but I have realized this about myself. My gender identity does not match the sex I was assigned at birth. And I want you to see me this way. And I want you to call me this. Now, that circle, they might have mirrored back to me, perhaps, like they might have asked me some questions, but they would have recognized my self-authority. There is no doubt about that, because that was one of our primary rules for getting together. You are in your own authority. And they would have witnessed me in me claiming the identity that was right for me. And so I really, was like, okay, this is what the sacred feminine has taught, that it is not for me to define anyone else. And for me, if I need to tell somebody that they are something else, that is patriarchy at work in me. Who is it? How is it mine to define someone else what they are? And I think standing in the middle right now on this dialogue is incredibly challenging. And what I hope for all of us is that we can hold multiplicities, that we can see multiple realities, and that we can have compassion for all of those things. And mostly to just take responsibility for ourselves and our own personal experiences. And that's what I was trying to do with the book.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a line, I jotted it down in here. I didn't write the whole line down. I need to look it up. It says, sometimes it feels downright arrogant to do so. And I think you were talking about, should have written the whole quote. That's what I get. Let's see. Oh, sometimes it's really hard to find the divine within ourselves. Sometimes it feels downright arrogant to even attempt to do so. And I think that speaks to what you were just talking about, is the power of developing that autonomy and that self-authority, sovereignty, that it's not arrogant, it's being true to ourselves. Yeah. And I actually remembered to screenshot this. We've mentioned this quote a lot, and it reminded me of that. The Gerda Lerner quote, Gerda Lerner quote. Perhaps the greatest challenge to thinking women is the challenge to move from the desire for safety and approval to the most unfeminine quality of all, that of intellectual arrogance, the supreme hubris, which asserts to itself the right to reorder the world. So I feel like this is your reordering, Liz. This is you saying, it feels uncomfortable, and I feel like maybe, who does she think she is? That arrogance, that thing we're taught not to embrace as women, but you push through it, right? In your 6 years and your ebbs and flows, to say, not this is what you should believe, because that's colonizer, that's patriarchy, that's white dominance, but this is what I believe to be true, and you can't shake it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just say too that I think hosting the podcast for the last few years has put me in touch with some really incredible people who have challenged me and changed me. And it has been an excellent exercise to sit and to witness and to listen to people's lived experiences, especially if it makes me uncomfortable, or if they're describing something that doesn't align with what I thought, and to accept that as a gift and to be like, oh, okay, I see you. I acknowledge you as a sacred person. Your experience is not aligning with mine. And so how do I hold that? Am I going to try and create a story that you're wrong? Or can I just be in the discomfort of like, oh, this is sticky. What do I do with this?
Right.
And usually the sticky places are the places I need to grow. That means I don't have to agree with them, but it means that there's something there for me to be with and to open to.
Absolutely. Because, as you said with the book, it's a static representation of where you are, but hopefully all of us are going to be somewhere different in 5 or 10 years. And then we may be where that person was that we were like, what the hell are they talking about? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this has been a very sacred feminine experience to me. I think I don't know if I put this in the book, but I've definitely said it on the podcast.
Yeah.
Every time I'm like, I've got this figured out, it's like she just comes and pulls the rug out from under me. She's like, nope.
Yep. Yep.
I guess I've learned to be grateful for those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to bring up one more thing. I can't believe how fast the time goes on these things. I'm going to bring this up because this has been like showing up for me a lot, and it has to do with this feminine and the sacred feminine And the fact that it's not, for me, I do not embrace the sacred feminine so that it can be in balance with the sacred masculine. I embrace her to reclaim all the beauty and all the truth that was withheld. But I have seen a lot of things lately that are pushing my buttons, and they use different terms like you need polarity in relationships. And what I have found is when I dig deep into the people who are saying these things, to me, it feels like a repackaging of the old gender scripts. So let's have women be more radiant and soft and playful, and let's have men be leaders and grounded in their presence. And this, it's like, oh my gosh, are we not past this? Can we not say, today I want to be strong, and tomorrow I want to be playful, and I want to lead in this area, and you can lead in that area, and all of that truth is not based on what gender I am? Like, I don't even know if I'm getting off here, but that has just been bubbling up for me. I would love to hear your thoughts about this masculine feminine interplay.
Yeah, I think so. Anything that ends up on social media, I feel like, okay, well, okay, a lot of stuff that ends up on social media gets vastly how can I say this? I was going to say dumbed down, which seems judgy, but it just gets overly simplified. And so I do know people who have been deep in that like polarity work, who can speak about it at a really deep level that do not, I know exactly what you're talking about, and they hold that in a much different kind of way. However, I think, oh gosh, I know. I think part of the problem, it's not surprising that I would go back to the historical record of the sacred feminine. The historical record has so much to offer us on this. I'm going to New York this weekend to see this exhibit it's about Enheduanna, who is our world's first poet. And she wrote poems to her beloved goddess Inanna. And if you read those poems in the translations, Inanna is she's wild. She is bloodthirsty. She is destructive. She is wildly sexual. She is maternal one minute and exceedingly cruel the next minute. And I think we are skipping over, like, we've got these beautiful examples of powerful and complex goddesses and sacred feminine figures in our historical, and not just our history. I think certain cultures still have them alive and living, and we're skipping over all of that when we try to oversimplify this into the feminine should be soft. And this is one of those areas where I just think the toxicity of patriarchy, we're like recreating these, I mean, for me, I equate them to Christianity, these stories that Christianity gave us without even knowing that we're doing it. So yeah, that kind of stuff does not resonate with me.
Oh, thank you for speaking to that. I feel like it's very much processing through me right now. I told Dominique I'm probably going to have a rant soon that is going to show up on social media when I explode, but
do it, rant. And I'll just add like one other thing to that. I know for me, when I stepped out of the business world, so I had a prior career, I ran my own company, I was really into it, and I thought that I was being like a super good feminist because my whole team was female, and we were funding a girls' scholarship with a nonprofit in town, and I mostly worked with women, and I'm like, I am doing it all, you know. And then I also, you know, but I would deal with this, like, I want to be home with my baby. My baby is 1.5 years, and I want more than any. I don't want to be sitting this stupid client meeting. I want to go home and hold my kid and feed her dinner. And it took me leaving, you know, and realizing all the ways that I had accepted the narrative that so-called softness or like family or wanting to rest, like all of these things that I had accepted this patriarchal story that those were lesser. So I think wherever you are on your journey, reclaiming some of that can be really good. Like, it was one of the best things in the world that I stepped off of that track and I gave myself those things. I gave myself time with my babies when they were little, and I gave myself time to rest, and I prioritized those things over profits. But it's just that there's so much more than that, like, that's not the whole story, I guess.
And that was your self-sovereignty. That was you choosing that. It wasn't someone saying, Liz, you're a bad woman because you're working. You need to be home with your babies. Like, that's very different. You embracing that and someone else pushing it on you. Yeah. I think for women, whether you have biological kids or not, I think that's a dance that we do all of our lives with I want to nurture. I want to be like sovereign to myself. I want to nurture, and it's a dance.
I think so, especially in our culture. And again, I think this dominant culture that we have doesn't really know how to do community. And again, I think if you look back in the historical record, I could be projecting this. And I also think other cultures know this, though, not just, I'm speaking mostly about like white culture here, but we don't know how to do community. We don't know how to hold these things together as a group. And so therefore, yes, mothers feel incredibly like that. You're always pulled back and forth because what we've got is this nuclear family. So that means it's all on you. So you're either like carrying, like you're always trying to figure out how can I be both of these things, because we don't have the deep support network yet.
I love that. Yeah. Well, I want to open it up to the group. Anyone have a question, a comment, a feeling, anything you want to bring to the circle that has to do with the book or anything we've talked about today?
Hi, Letitia here. Liz, I just want to say I'm looking forward. The book did not arrive before today, so I didn't get a chance to look at it, but I'm so looking forward to reading it. And I want to appreciate Monette and Liz for bringing up appropriation and what's appropriate. I think it's a really important topic, because she of 10,000 names, she has faces everywhere in the world. And there's been, over the course of the last, 40 or 50 years, many books written. And just very excited this conversation is happening. And Liz, congratulations. It's such a gift to the world that you share your story. And thank you so much for creating this platform. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you all should know that Letitia has been in this goddess work and leading in so many ways. Google her, y'all, after this. Like, she's been doing this work for decades. It's such an honor to have you here. And your support means the world to me.
We're going to Google you, Letitia, and I will possibly be in touch, because, I'm always looking for voices. We're all about not having a voice of the sacred feminine, but having many voices and many experiences and many ways to process. So I look forward to checking out your work.
I'm Laura. I do have a comment and a question regarding appropriation as well. Is that, as a white woman and in this culture and this time, it's hard when I love things that seem exotic, different, new to me, and I love learning about them. And my friend and I, we try and think, is this appropriation or is this appreciation? And we find if we're spending money to an organization or a person that doesn't truly represent the culture that the product represents, then that's appropriation. But if you're doing it in a way that shows appreciation for that culture and the origination of the idea or whatever, then we try and consider it appreciation. And I don't know how much of that is like a justification to have or be a part of groups that generally wouldn't include me, but it's the best way we've found to be able to appreciate other cultures and show our support for them without having that, negative feeling attached to it. And I don't know, since we do have a couple of women of color, I don't know what y'all's definition of that is, and any guidance on that is greatly appreciated.
Well, I'll just share two things. One, I think it's essential, that you know where and how your stuff is made, especially if it's sacred items. That's one. Two, for those of us who are committed to honoring the sacred feminine, sacred in woman, goddess, really, that it's really important that we consider, was it woman made? These are the ways that I sort of tick down. Where do I get my stuff? Was it made by woman? Is it a woman-owned business? Because here we are still in this 21st century, women are still suffering financially. And then, of course, when we actually, this comes from the training that I received. When you are calling on a goddess, it's like, cold calling a stranger, So what have you done to prepare yourself to hear her? What do you know about her culture? What do you know about her people? And when you're using items from that culture, while they are exotic and very beautiful and you can see them, they're much more interesting and exciting. But the tool and in which they came from, can you honor it when you receive it, however you do, purchasing it from someone or receiving it as a gift? Those are the things that I would say about that.
That's great perspective. Yeah. We read a book last month. And I should have, what was our Gina Martin's book?
Sisters of the Solstice Moon.
Yes, thank you, Dominique. I knew someone would remember. That to me actually spoke to what Letitia was just talking about, because reading that book, I got a much deeper understanding of the goddess cultures, because sometimes, even though this was like speculative historical fiction, it brought to life the depth of those communities in ways that maybe sometimes reading a nonfiction account doesn't do. It brought a spark to it. And I really like, I'm so envious that Liz is going to go see that exhibit in New York, because now I know who she was because of that book. Yeah, so.
It's going to the end of February. Just saying.
Alrighty,
if you want to do it. You want to get crazy and drive up with my family this weekend? It's
if it was just you, I would.
Where is the exhibit?
I'm gonna be in Colorado. Never mind.
Liz, where is the exhibit?
It's at the Morgan Library in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I know where it is.
Okay, I've not been to, but yeah, my kids are out of school on Monday, and so we got this wild idea. I have family who lives right outside of New York, so we're driving up tomorrow morning, whirlwind trip, so I can go see this and then coming back. Yeah.
Well, Adriana has to go. Like you're.
Right. I live in New York, and I know where the library is, so I'm going to Google it.
Oh my gosh.
It looks amazing. And if you do Google it, all of you, if you Google it, there have been articles about it in the New York Times and the New Yorker. It looks really special. So I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? We've got a beautiful ending for today. So if we don't have any other comments, questions, I told you we would start and end with the meditation, because I think that is very honoring of sacred feminine. And Dominique is actually going to lead us, and Liz is going to read, and I'm going to be the techie music person over here playing something that will hopefully work. So Dominique, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Monette. Thank you so much, everyone. for being here. We'll just jump right into it. So I just want to invite you to close your eyes and to take a deep breath. I invite you to ground into your seat, wherever you are, and try to remember. We are remembering her. We are remembering the creatrix. We are remembering the originator. We are remembering the great mother, the sacred feminine. And when you hear these words that Liz is about to share with us, I want to invite you to imagine that the sacred feminine, the her being described, is you. Take another deep breath. And Monette, you can play the music when you're ready.
I'm trying.
In the beginning was her, always her, only her, rolling, undulating in the waters from which she emerged, the water herself and the creation that poured forth. Self-generating, a virgin in the truest, oldest sense of the word. She is the deepest dark of the earth, the blackest of nights, the holy silence of the womb. She's the light within the darkness that tenderly cradles the light, the ecstasy and the terror forever intertwined, the urgent pulse of creation, the crackle and hum of divine energy that surrounds us all, waiting to be heard, waiting to be felt. She is everything. She is nothingness. She alone is.
is again. Ah, yes, there she is again. Ah, yes, there she is again.
Well, I hope everyone feels like they came home to her today and home to yourselves. I want to thank Liz for being with us. It was wonderful. And, you know, you can get her signed book from Womancraft Publishing. They're wonderful. We want to support them. Get my meditation brain on. Tell you what we've got coming up. I've been hard at work. My goal is to get a lot of our book club selections nailed down for the year so you can read ahead. I wish I could tell you what next month was. I've been trying really hard, and it's an important month for me because it's Black History Month. And as much as I have so many wonderful authors on my list, I'm committed to having a Black author. And I have some requests out to people, but I haven't confirmed. So I'll let you know as soon as I do. But we do have a few that I have been able to confirm for this year that I'm excited about. Octavia Rahim, who wrote Pause, Rest, Be, is going to be with us in September. I just confirmed her this morning. I wanted to have her for Black History Month, but she had a conflict. So, and there's a scholar who studies Artemis. She actually just returned from Greece, Dr. Carla Ionescu, and she's written a book on Artemis called She Who Hunts. And it's really, like Liz was saying, the depth of these goddesses. Carla's going to blow you away. So I'm going to have her for Women's History Month in March, and she's confirmed. So I'll fill you in on the rest, but we're kind of in this. I love how our events, I would love to say I planned them all this way, but a flow, it's the feminine, sacred feminine flow. So we had Liz bringing us home to her. And then we're going to have our next meter at the altar is going to be a returning ceremony, returning home. So it's going to be like ritual and embodiment. And Patricia's going to lead that. And that's going to be on Sunday, the 12th of February. And then the next day, we're starting our next big class, which again feeds right into this. It's on a vow of faithfulness to yourself and the importance of that primary vow that women don't often even consider. We grow up thinking, who am I going to attach myself to? What's that big day going to look like? That vow. But we're going to go back home to ourselves and make vows over 7 weeks. And that's going to start. Most of the classes are on Tuesdays. That week is Valentine's Day. So we're doing it on Monday, the 13th will be that first class. And we'll include the link to that when we send out the recording from this. So yeah, thank you, Liz. And any last thing you want to share with us about the book or you or what you have going on?
I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. It's just my most favorite thing to be in community with other people about and to talk about. And so I'm grateful for y'all listening and giving me this opportunity to talk about the thing that I love most in the world. Yeah, the Home to Her podcast, we always take a hiatus in January because it's a resting month for me, but I will be back with episodes in February. And my first guest is Lynn Twist, who I don't know if y'all are familiar with Lynn Twist, but yeah. She wrote The Soul of Money, and then she had a new book come out called Living a Committed Life. So she'll be on the full moon in February, which I think is the 5th, but I'm not sure. So yeah, just thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
everyone being here, and Dominique will get the recording out and let us know if we can support you in any way on your reclamation journey.